Hey parents, so it's Paul and Mindy here with you, and so over the course of the last month or so, I have been just kind of convicted on communicating with you better and just working through that, and so I've been creating what I've called the parent pipeline, and so we have a newsletter, and then I want to start some videos on occasion that are just things that are going on in youth culture and youth world to help you understand and kind of know what's going on. Anything we say today is not intended to tell you how to parent or anything like that, but simply just to ask questions and just to maybe help you think through some things that are going on, and then to help give some possible solutions and resolutions to things as well. And so this is Parent Pipeline, and today we're going to talk about social media a little bit, primarily with TikTok. Mindy and I were having a conversation 2 or 3 days ago, and she was really asking about some things correlating with that and stuff going on. Do you want to share a little bit kind of about what you were just discussing with me and just kind of all of that?
Yeah. So my kids don't have cell phones still. We're kind of the weird parents. Caleb's in 6th grade and Maddie's in 5th, and then Josh was in 1st, and we don't have phones. So of course they're around friends that have phones and things like that, and we just, since we don't have phones, we don't have TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, so I didn't really even know what it was, but you start to see articles and people sharing things on Facebook, and I'd heard some opinions, I guess, if you will, about TikTok. So I just happened to be watching a video that someone else had posted, a friend of mine's kid or something, and Maddie was standing next to me listening, and as soon as the video ended, it went into like other videos you might want to watch type thing. And it shocked me because it was, I don't know, boy or girl on a couch, and you could just see their butt, to be real honest, and someone over was like poking it, and Maddie's eyes were just big as saucers. And so I think it just led me down a road to go, what is this, and what are kids watching on here? Because I know I had to quickly kind of swipe to get out of it, and then as it went on, it was just more and more videos that I remember thinking, I'm glad Maddie walked away. I would not want her to see what these girls were doing in this video. There was just a lot of shaking, I'll say that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, so because of that conversation, it sparked me to investigate further. I've not done much with TikTok, primarily because I've heard of, honestly, there are many times pornographic things that are easily accessible, and so for me, in some ways, that's just a protection thing. I don't want any of that, and so I decided, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump on TikTok. So I created an account, and so I sat with my wife, and so for about 2 hours, we decided, all right, we're gonna watch these videos, just whatever pops up. At first, there was it was unrestricted, and so that made me very, very nervous on some videos that started to pop up, and so we set a standard of, if anything looked to be overtly sexual, pornographic in any way, we'd swipe and make it go away, and then whatever the next thing was. And then I found out there's a restricted kind of version or whatever. You can put a restriction on it. I don't know what that means, because even on a restricted level, there was still things that were very, very sensualized, very sexual. There were still things that were, well, I mean, I heard enough language in 2 hours like I watched a rated R movie. There were some things that were funny, some things that were positive. There are some good things. I can't just say negative things about it, because there are people who are trying to use it for, even for Jesus, giving a good word of devotion or whatever else. So I know that those things are out there, but I will say there was less of that in the 2 hours I spent, again, just swiping whatever TikTok gave me. And so it really just threw up a flag of concern for me, and letting you guys kind of know what is potentially out there if you've not investigated this yourself. And so led me down a path to start thinking about what do we need to do with this. And so again, general social media, as well as specifically things like TikTok, we know it's not going to go away.
No.
It's here to stay. Like, this is what we have. So we have to figure out what we're going to do with this. And so
Absolutely.
the first thing that I was led to was a verse out of 1 Corinthians that Paul writes, and he says, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. And so I kind of thought, I think a question that all parents, myself included, because I have now a preteen, you have a preteen, we have younger ones that are going to be there soon. And so we should ask ourselves, do we even want to allow our children to have social media
Right.
access? Or if we are going to allow them, how much? What
Yeah.
guidelines or boundaries are we going to put in
Yeah.
place? And when we think about this verse, what Paul is saying is that, yeah, there are plenty of things out there that are open for the believer, for the Christian to partake of, to be in their life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's helpful, or like he says, but not all things build up.
Mm.
And that really, really struck me because I think one, we share a responsibility as parents to build up our children
Yeah.
in the Lord, especially
Yeah.
if we're believers. We're instructed, we're commanded to do that.
Yeah.
And so it led me down a path of asking myself, how much of social media, with all the good that there is, how much of it actually builds
That's
up?
good. And I think like nowadays, especially in our culture, kids are beaten down
Mm-hmm.
at every turn. So anything, we know this. We've seen the research that social media, bullying, cyberbullying, things like that. We've heard stories of suicide and things like that. So there's so much in just social media and online platforms that is tearing kids down.
Absolutely.
And that verse is so true. What's going to build them up? And I think one thing that's so important to remember with anything we do with kids, but especially with the social media presence, is once you've started it, it's harder to stop it. So
Yeah.
it's like if you ever go there,
Mm-hmm.
and we know this with kids with anything, if I had never fed them fries or unhealthy foods, but you know, I like cake. So it's harder now for my kids to get
Yes.
healthy eating habits.
Yes.
And Jimmy and I look back all the time and say, we should have done it when they were young. We should have established better eating habits. It's the same thing, I think, with letting them have phones, letting them have access to technology and social media and apps. It's harder to pull them away from them once you've given in and
Yeah.
given it.
Absolutely, absolutely, especially unfiltered, unlimited access, right?
Right.
You know, I don't know all the ins and outs. I know that some social media devices or apps and stuff are where you can like sync. If you have a profile, you can sync it with yours, so you kind of see what your child is seeing. I discovered last night that there is actually apps out there that you can put a lock, like a time limit on how much you are allowed on a particular app, and then a code has to be put in, you know, by a parent or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that code, like the child cannot access that app anymore until the next time, the next
Yeah.
day or whatever,
Mm.
or that code's put in. And so there are things out there that are helpful for that. But I think it's important for that to be one of the first questions that all parents ask. And again, I'm not coming at this from like, you should ask this yourself. I myself, my wife and I have been asking the same question. You
Yeah.
and Jimmy have been asking
Yeah.
the same question, like what is going to be most beneficial for our kids? And, you know, I know that sometimes that conversation can be hard. Like when your child is the only one
Right. Yes.
who is not having access to this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already had my son has been asked why he's not allowed to play certain video games
Mm-hmm.
because of their violence or whatever else, and he doesn't fully know why. We've talked about it some, but kids look at him strange,
Mm-hmm.
and for some of us as parents, we struggle with it. We're like, but I don't want that for my kid. I'm putting them
Yes.
in a social awkward dilemma and
Yeah.
everything else. But at the same time, I look at scripture and it's full where it says, but we're not to be like the world.
Yeah, we're to be different. I think it's kind of like the same thing with discipline. It's like it's just easier to give in sometimes, right? Isn't it? When you want to discipline your kids, but you're like, and they hound and hound and hound. You're like, fine, just go do whatever, get whatever it is, just to quit hounding me.
Yeah.
World's worst. So not preaching on it. It's easier just to give in and just let it be what it is. And then I honestly think sometimes it's just easier too to just bury our heads in the sand because it's like if I put out something to my kids, then I have to follow through on discipline. That's just tiring. And I just want to go sit down and relax. So if we put that out there that we're either not going to do this, or maybe we say, fine, you can have social media, but then what if it goes down a wrong road? Then we have to actually follow through.
Yes.
On some consequences of that, and that's the hardest part of parenting to me.
Yeah,
the follow through.
Absolutely, and it is, and I don't have a good answer for that in any way. It's just a part of life, and it's something that we have to work through. And so, yeah, I think I just wanted to pose when it comes to social media, and I think TikTok in particular, because right now I just see it as very, very unfiltered. And I mean, there was a video going around of a man who committed suicide.
Yeah.
Like, your children could potentially be exposed to somebody
Right.
who put a gun to his head,
Right.
right? The trauma behind that and everything else, I couldn't imagine what that would be. And so again, just ask, which battle is more worth having? The battle of the parenting of consequences and maybe being looked as a little strange or whatever else, and having to work through that, or the battle of my kid has been exposed to something that has actually been detrimental to their mental health, their spiritual health, their emotional health, or they're now addicted to something.
Yeah.
So whether their first access to pornography as a boy is through, let's say, TikTok, that leads them down another path, or just being addicted to social media in general. And so Mindy and I were talking about that too, some dangers of that, that we had learned. We were doing a family ministry thing, and that your brain, as you get all these likes, as you get all of these different things, your brain creates dopamine, right? You think about dopamine, like that's the idea, and so you begin to crave that. There's validation. There's all kinds of things that correlate with that.
Yeah, there's things that fire in your brain when someone likes something or gives you a positive word. There's actually something that fires in your brain, and you can't get enough of it. You want to go back again and again. And I think in reference to what you were saying about, like, especially on TikTok and that suicide video, I wish I knew more of the psychology behind it. But once you've seen something, it's burned. It's an image that's been burned in your mind. That's a phrase, an image that's been burned in your mind, and it's there. Like, it's there. I can remember mental images of things I saw in 3rd and 4th grade, in some different scenarios, and I cannot get those images out of my head. They're still there, and I'm 42.
Yeah.
So if your child is on that and you don't know, and a video like that circulates around, or an inappropriate image or whatever, it's there. It's like lasered into their brain. And those images are powerful.
Yes.
They are powerful.
No, you're absolutely right. This is very transparent. I can remember the first time I ever saw anything that was pornographic. And I was probably 6th or 7th grade, probably 7th grade. We had cable, but we didn't have cable to those channels, like Cinemax or all that. But occasionally they would come in. It was really weird. It was all grainy and stuff, but I didn't know. I had no clue. Like, I'm just flipping through. It was late night. Mom and Dad went to bed. They let me stay up, and all of a sudden this movie's on, and I'm like, whoa. And I mean, I'm 36, and I can clearly, I could tell you every detail that I remember from just that scene that I saw. And I thank God, by His grace, I turned it off, and I mean, His Spirit was with me to just say no. Right, because I can't imagine. Actually, I do know, because I've had friends that have walked down that path of being addicted to pornography, and they've told me what that's done to them. And so, anyways, I just know that that this is a potential danger. And so, I don't want to harbor on that. I don't want to just lay everything there, because this is a reality. So I think the next question is, what do we do if our kids are already involved in this stuff, or we decide, I think I want them to be involved with that, because we need to have an answer for that as well. And so in Proverbs 11:14, it says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety." And so what it's saying, right, is if there, let's just reword it. Where there is no guidance, a teenager falls. But in an abundance of counselors, or an abundance of spiritually strong adults, there is safety. And so think about that in terms of what's going on here. And so what I understand this to be, in a very nutshell way, is that we as parents need to be able to help filter the information that our kids are getting. Tim Elmore, I highly, highly recommend any book he writes, anything you can find by him. Tim Elmore wrote a book called Artificial Maturity, and this is a quote from him. He says, "For the first time in history, young people don't need parents or teachers to obtain information." Let that sink in for a second. Your kids do not need you. My kids do not need me necessarily to obtain information. They have Google. Although not everything is necessarily trustworthy on the internet, let's be honest. They do need us, however, for interpretation. We must help them interpret and make sense of the information they are taking in. This is the new job of adults as they relate to kids. What thoughts do you have towards that?
We were talking about that earlier a little bit, how this is a new thing for us, right? So my mom didn't raise me in a generation where I had social media to worry about. It may have been the TV late at night, or it may have been explicit lyrics in a song that she had to go buy the disc for me, which I didn't. Obviously, my mom would not probably. Parental advisory label on it. But now it is so much at the fingertips of kids that it's in their hands. So we're putting, just what you said, that information is at their disposal.
Yeah.
They can go on Google or YouTube and type in anything, and boom, they can watch anything they want to watch. They can learn about anything they want to learn about before we're ready for them to learn about it. And so I think that's the thing, is we don't know how to parent in this new era. We don't have a generation before us to go back to and say, what did you do when I was younger? They don't know. They're going to say, we didn't have that as an issue. So I don't know. We have to find trusted individuals like Tim Elmore that are solid, that we can look to for guidance.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Bible.
And of course, Scripture. Yes, I mean Scripture as and I mean you can't necessarily Google, hey, what does Scripture say about social media, right? Because it doesn't, but it has principles, and there are definitely, like what we're pulling out right now with these verses that we've talked about. And so I guess what I want to encourage you is begin having conversations with your student, with your teenager and child. I mean, let's be honest, we have third graders that are running around with phones, and so begin having conversations with them. But I want to preface it with this, is especially as they're older, more teenagers, sometimes that can be difficult. So we need to come from the perspective of understanding. We want to understand their world. We want to understand, like, okay, this is a reality in your life. So help me understand that, but then help them process. So asking probing questions that actually allows them to try and come up with the answers on their own. And so, or solutions or whatever else, and framing that in a biblical worldview. So as Christians, as believers, that's our ultimate goal, is to help them filter things through a biblical worldview. And so, so asking those questions that help them with that, because you're, especially teenager, we all know this, we were there once, your teenager's not going to respond to you going, well, this is why you shouldn't do this and why, blah, 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 right? They need to know that you understand, that you're hearing that, and then, again, just asking those questions to help them process that.
And let me give a plug real quick for the part where it says an abundance of counselors, an abundance of counselors. And I'm going to do a plug right now just for having your kids in a body of believers, in a church family, having them around other Christian adults that are speaking into their life. I'm going to cry talking about this. Because like my Maddie's in 5th grade, and I hope it's okay to say names, but like Bethany was her leader last night. And Bethany was her leader last year. And so Maddie has a relationship with her. Caleb has a relationship with you. And so if they're not listening to mom and dad, maybe they'll listen to Pastor Paul or a Miss Bethany, or so many people I could name in our church family. And, my kids are around these other Christian adults regularly. I think that's the thing too, is being plugged in, and let your kids be a part of the church body where they can have those other believers to speak into their life.
And that means knowing who they're around, having that knowledge and understanding of who they are and how they're going to help. I mean, coaches, all of those things, those are important to know kind of who they are and what principles they're going to raise your child up in, as well. And so absolutely having that abundance of counselors, if you will, is so critical and important. I had a professor, he always said that it took 5 significant adults to 1 youth in order for strong spiritual impact to take place. Think about that. 5 strongly spiritual adults, so if you have mom and dad, that's 2. If you include youth pastor, that's 3. That leaves you with 2 left, and I don't know who that could be, but that's really what statistics have said, is that it takes 5 significant adults to impact the life of a teenager. And so it's really, really important. Positively, yes. So that's really, really important. So Elmore, I wanted to share this because you may be thinking, okay, great. You kind of said, I got to help guide them, but I don't really fully know what that means or what that looks like. You said I need to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
So Elmore, in his book, Artificial Maturity, again, highly recommend to buy and to read. These are some things he just says when you're trying to help your child process information that they're taking in and to a worldview. He says to ask these questions. He says, so when a student requests more autonomy, some more freedom, ask, did they follow through the last time they were given freedom with time or resources? So ask yourself that, and then allow that to guide your thoughts and your direction and what you do. And even, like we've done this with my son. We've been trying to teach him. He's a sixth grader. Trying to teach him, autonomy a little bit more. He's asking for that.
Yeah.
And so I was super proud of him. It's a very simple thing, but I praised him for it. We didn't get his lunch schedule, and so he said, "Dad, what do I do?" I said, "I can't access it on whatever he was trying to access it on." I said, "I don't know, bud." I said, "You've got people at school that should be able to help you." So I get a text message from the vice principal, and she said, "Here's the menu. Jude said you guys couldn't get it. He couldn't get it." So on his own initiative, I didn't tell him, go to this person. He did it, and I praised the fire out of him because I thought, great. He was given some autonomy, and he used that well. And so it's the same staying at home or whatever else. So ask those questions, and then have that conversation with your student or with your child about some of that stuff. Again, the younger they are, you're going to be more authoritative.
Right.
As they get older, you're going to be less so in some of that.
Yeah.
Second thing he says is, when a student wants more information, ask, how sensitive are they to current topics of discussion?
What can they handle?
What can they handle, right? So Netflix, we got Cuties out there right now. We had 13 Reasons Why, which I've seen 3 seasons of that. I couldn't handle much more of that drivel, but it was bad. But even the show Cobra Kai, I was watching Cobra Kai. I mean, I know it's based on Karate Kid, it's silly, whatever. But as I'm watching it, I'm going, man, like, it's geared for teenagers. And some of the things they talk about and handle, I thought, are teenagers ready to handle some of that stuff?
And every kid is different. You have to know your kid.
Yeah. And so are they sensitive to some things, or sensitive to some things they may see on social media? And so have discussions over that and help your child understand where they are. It says, when children are hesitant to act on their own, ask, why do they fear independence? What prevents them from feeling confident? So again, just trying to find out, helping them process that information, and then the autonomy that they're asking for in social media or other things. It says, when a subject surfaces in conversation, ask, do their actions reveal a readiness to use or process the information in their worldview? And so if something comes up, to what extent do you need to have that conversation? So I think of a child, one of my younger ones, if they ask me a question about why there are boys and why there are girls, we're not going to have a full-out conversation about everything correlating with that, but we're going to have what's within their ability, right? Yeah. And that's essentially what he's asking. And so same thing with social media. I think that's what we need to do, is asking some of these questions to help process. So, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think my last thought was, I said this to Paul earlier, and I referenced it a little bit ago, that this is a new thing that we have no clue what to do. And in an instant as parents, you're trying to decide when they come and say, well, can I do this? And mine will do it with shows. One of them will say, can we watch this? And I always look at parent reviews. Focus on the Family has one called Plugged In. And so I'll search it and see what's in this show. What are they going to be watching? What's it about? And you have to make a snap judgment sometimes. Or sometimes you have to say, you know what? Let me and your dad, or let me go think about this, pray about this. We'll talk about it and we'll let you know. But I think the one thing that's in my spirit so strongly is we don't want to get this wrong. We don't want to get this wrong. This is a new thing, but I fear that we might potentially, as parents in this generation, get 20 years down the road, as I'm sure every generation does, and look back and go, oh, we really missed the mark, right? You're always going to look back as a parent and go, I should have done that better, or I should have done this better, or whatever. But some things can do irreparable damage to a child. Some images they see, some things they're exposed to, can set them on a path that is harder to reverse, especially as they get older. And parents, I pray that we don't look back and go, I messed this one up big time with this social media thing. I let them get addicted. I let things speak into their life that shouldn't have been there. I let them be exposed to images and things they were too young to see. So I think that's it. I think constant prayer, like
Yeah.
we need to be on our knees daily, fighting for our kids and seeking God's wisdom. God, help me in this new thing that I don't know how to do. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say we're not going to be perfect at it.
No.
We're going to fail.
No.
It's inevitable. I mean, we're flawed. It's going to happen. But I think we bear responsibility for not trying.
Right.
We bear responsibility for not putting in the effort to do what we've been called to do, commanded to do by God, and raising our children. And so I would just say, God knows. We're not going to get it all figured out.
Right.
But I do know that He blesses faithfulness. And so even in those moments that we mess up, we don't get it right, and we keep going back to, okay, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep. He blesses that faithfulness, and we may not see it through the teenage years. We may have, I don't know who. I fear what we're going to have, but we may have rough teenage years. But you may see the blessing later on down the road in the faithfulness of what you were called to do as a parent. And so, just be cautious of things on social media. Be willing to have those conversations with your children, with your students. Do your own investigation. Put in that time and that effort. I know we're all tired. We're all busy. We have so many things to do. But I go back to that thought that I had and that question I asked is, which battle is worth it more?
Right.
And be willing to fight.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to be that parent.
Yeah.
Because I always tell kids when they talk about friends, you're going to know these people in school with you. Some of them till you graduate high school. Some of them may be beyond. But we're fighting for our kids' souls and for their future, not for the here and now. So it's okay to be that parent.
Absolutely. It is.
Be that
it's tough.
parent.
And find other parents that are that parent.
Yeah.
And then you got a community. And then, that's a little easier. But that's just kind of what we wanted to share. Again, I don't know what all these videos will look like in the future, but I hope to do something maybe like once a month and just helping offer some insight or whatever into youth world culture, and then give a little bit of biblical insight into maybe how we handle that. So I hope this video will be beneficial to you, and I'll see you again next time.
Sounds good.